sew this together using the whip stitch on the back loops. If you wanted to. If you want to do it, or you can do it on all the loops. I'm going to do it on all the loops. So I'm going to go across like this. And we're just going to keep going in the same direction. And it's good to have a very bright light. I usually use an LED light when working. Or I like to use the natural sunlight, that's good too. If you're working in front of a window. Or to have an LED light right above where you're working. I'm going to go across all of the loops here. I also wanted to mention that when you're skipping a stitch, you want to make sure that you're not going to have any holes in your seam. So one thing that I like to do is I will angle my yarn needle so it's not across, but I just angle it a little bit where it skips a stitch. And you don't want to skip too many stitches to make sure you don't have a hole. And I also have, and it may be helpful, a tutorial on skip a stitch for crocheting on my page, Tiffany's Crafts. I have many tutorial videos that can help with this project if you have any questions. So here I'm angling it, not going across straight. Okay, and so we're getting ready to do the corner again. If you make this hat, feel free to make a comment and even add a photo and send me a photo if you want to. You can send it to me on my email address or in the comment section. Because I would really enjoy seeing everyone's work and the creations that they make. No two hats are the same, and that's what's so nice about making a homemade hat. Why are they not the same? You might think, and that would be because you might choose a different material or have a different tension when crocheting. No two artworks are alike. And other options that you can use with this hat is you could always make a pom-pom on top. This is sewing up real nice. And take your time on this. Go slow. Don't rush through this, so you make sure that it's perfect, because you don't want any holes in your seam. See, I am skipping a stitch here. And you think, well, maybe with skipping a stitch it would decrease the number of stitches, and that is possible. And you see that I'm getting towards the end of my working yarn, and I will just add more yarn to it by knotting it. And I'm not pulling too hard on this, you know, a little bit, but not too much. And so we have almost the whole thing done. So we just have to do the one side. And I will continue doing rib stitch. Might have enough yarn where I won't have to add extra by knotting it and putting extra on. And, you know, at this time you want to start thinking about your brim and how you want your brim to look. And I do have a video on how to make a brim with a written pattern. And that is also on my YouTube page, Tiffany's Crafts. And all of these tutorial videos are detailed to help you with your projects that you do. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type it up and ask and send it in as a comment. Now, I didn't skip too many stitches with this. I didn't do every other one. You can, if that's what works best for you. Some hats, I would do more skipping stitches than others. Okay, so I am towards the end, and I'm not going to make it all the way through without pulling on it too much. So I'm just going to grab some more yarn and knot it. And add more. And what is so beautiful about this hat is that it is reversible. unless if you put a pom-pom on top of it. Okay, so we just knotted it. I'll give myself a little bit more yarn. Now, you might have trouble threading a needle if the eye is not large enough, or if your yarn is quite large and the eye is small. So a good trick is to just loop this around your finger, make a little point, and it'll go right through. I like to do that when I'm using very thick yarn. Now the yarn that I'm using today it's not that thick, but especially is a nice technique to use if you're using thick yarn like velvet. Okay, so we got the knot because my yarn wasn't long enough, and so we knotted it, and we're going to continue whip stitching through the end, and we're almost about done. Now this is at the end where you may see some puckering if you didn't skip enough stitches. But I think we're going to be fine here. But I'm going to skip a little bit more, a few more stitches in here. Because if you went straight, you would have a little bit of a pucker right going across here. So we'll just be sure to skip 1 or 2 stitches. And it should work just nice. And you'll still have a very nice look to this. When I skip stitches, I don't like to skip one stitch after the other. And then when you're skipping stitches, just to make sure that everything's even, you could think about where you skipped it and make sure that if you skipped a stitch over here, to skip a stitch over here too. You could do that if you wanted to. It's not necessary. When I'm crocheting a hat in the round and most of my stitches are double crocheted and I want to start to skip stitches, that's when you mostly want to be paying attention to where you're skipping those stitches. So then it's all even on all of it, so you don't have more stitches skipped on one side of the hat than the other. And I do have a tutorial on how I make a hat in the round using just double crochet. And that hat turned out really pretty. And it's got lots of big holes in it, and it's really a nice hat to wear in the summertime. That's the hat that I always grab when I'm on the lake in the summertime and I don't want my hair to get all windy, or I want it to be a little bit warmer, even though the weather is warmer. And I will put these tutorial videos in the description below. And we just have a little tiny bit more to go, and then we'll be done with this part, and then we will begin the brim. And I've been thinking about this hat, and I'm just trying to decide if I want to use a green colored brim and use the green that I made the shamrocks out of, or if I want to continue and use this real pretty cream color. Sometimes when you make a knot, it might be hard for it to go through all the loops. I'm probably going to go with the green brim, because where I live in Northeast Ohio, we have pretty cold weather, and this green that I am using looks like a very warm material, especially if I want to wear this hat around St. Patrick's Day, because we usually always have snow on St. Patrick's Day. But this year, though, we didn't get any snow, and that is very unusual. And it was warm, too. That was a really nice surprise, especially for all the people who want to go to the parades in Northeast Ohio. It just made it so much more enjoyable. And this hat is a good hat to wear to go to a St. Patrick's Day parade. And I also like it because you can also wear this year-round, because it is still subtle enough where the shamrock would look like a flower, as in a regular granny square would be with all the four corners. But it still also shows the shamrock. Okay, so we are just about finished with this. And I'm going to do one more stitch, even though it's done. And then I'm going to take the tail ends that I have going across all of the squares, and I'm going to weave in my ends. Okay, so this is done. It looks really nice. And you want to look across here, see if there's any holes, because if there are, then you would just go back in that area and sew that up. I don't see any. Everything looks really nice. Everything looks great. Okay, so then so if you had a hole, you would just take your new work, you would make a new working yarn, and you go across where that is. Okay, and then you would do a whip stitch right in that area. Right, so then we are going to just pull our needle down through here, from the top to the bottom, to make our needle go on the inside of the hat. And then we're going to weave in our ends. I don't want this big long tail to weave in. You could do that if you like, but I'm not going to do that. I usually trim it about a few inches. And I like to weave in the ends. First, I'm going to knot it. You don't have to, but it's my personal preference to knot it, then weave in ends. Just something that I've always have done, even with loom knitting. Right before I weave in ends, I could do that. Now, if you wanted to put a pom-pom on this hat, you could do that at this time. And the way you can do a pom-pom through the center of your granny square, which is where your magic circle is. You would put your pom-pom going through that hole. And there are a lot of pom-pom makers that you can use, or you can just use some cardboard to make a pom-pom. I don't want a pom-pom on this hat. Okay, so that's how you weave in your ends. And then you just cut any extra off. Now, if you were going to make a pom-pom, and if, of course you would start here where this hole is, and then on your circle. And you could take your working yarn, pull it up through that hole, and you can even make a pom-pom with your working yarn. I've done that with dolls that I have made. Or you can make the pom-pom and attach it right here to the top. This looks very pretty. So I have a few tails that I'm going to weave in. Now, when you're doing this, and I have a knot that's already been made right here, and I don't want this knot to stick up so it's visible. So that's why I'm weaving in the ends, because if I was just to cut this, you would just see a knot right there, and maybe a little few ends sticking out, fray ends. So that's why I'm going to weave in these ends. And when I'm weaving ends, I don't like to go all the way through like this and pull it through. I like to just use the stitches that are on the back side to weave in the ends. Now that knot has gone through one of the back loops on the square, and you're not going to see the knot. And the knot's going to be on the inside of the hat. And that does give it a nice finished look to it. However, there are some times when you don't want to weave in ends if your tail's too short. Then you would just want to cut it right at the knot. And then you really don't see the weaved in ends. It's right here, but you wouldn't see it if you were just looking at the hat